Samsaradava nalalita loka Taranaya karuna gana ganatam Praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu Kirtanarita Gita Vaditramatyan Manasora Sena Romanchakam Shutaranga Bhajo Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Shivikrahara Dana Nitya Nana Shingara Tamma Hantira Marjanado Yutasya Bhaktam Chanyunjatopi Vande Uroshi Charanarvindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadharna Tripta Hari Bhakta Sangha Kriteva Tripti Bhajatha Sadaiva Vande Uroshi Charanarvindam Shiradhika Mahatavayora Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namnam Patishana Swadanalolupasya Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Nikunja Yuno Radhikedi Sitai Yayari Pir Yuktira Peshaniya Tatrati Daksha Dati Vallabhasya Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam Sashatharitena Samasta Shastre Utasthatha Bhaviteva Sattvihi Kintu Prabhoya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi Dhyayam stuvam stasya yashasti sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Radha Nila Madha Radha Nila Madha Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Shri Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Sudarshana Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Jai Om Vishnu Pada Brahmamsa Prajakacharya Stota Shata Shishimati His Divine Grace Abharachanda Vrinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Bhaktivedanta Institute Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Brahmamsa Prajakacharya Stota Shata Shishimati His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridasa Kru Ki Jai Premise Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Braja Bhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samavrita Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya
Namaste Narasimhaya
Praladadadaine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatankanakalaye Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yato yato yami tato narsimha. Pahi narsimho hridaye narsimho. Narasimhamadim sharanam prapade. Tava kara kamala varenakam adbhuta shingam dalita hiranyakashipu tanubhringam keshavadrita naraharirupa jai jagadisha hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jaya Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev, Narsimhadev, Jaya Narsimhadev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Eya Bilashi पाबो एय अभिलाषी જે તો માર શરણ લોય તારા વાંચ પૂર્ણ હોય કૃપા કોરી કોરો તારે વૃંદાવન વાસી વિલાસ કુંજ દિયો વાસ નયને હેરી બો સદા યુગલ રૂપ રાસી નિવેદન ધરો સખીરાનુગત કોરો સેવાદિ કર દિયે કોરો નિજ દાસી દીના કૃષ્ણ દાસે કોઈ એ ન મોરા હોય શ્રી રાધા ગોવિંદા પ્રેમે સદા એ નવાસી શ્રી રાધા ગોવિંદા પ્રેમે સદા એ નવાસી यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय।
Pressure goes to Shiva and down the town. Thus within my vision I shall always behold the beautiful person Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me follow a Kara dancer's Vraja. Please give me the privilege devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love Shri Radha and Govinda Srimati Tulasi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blast in the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature pursuant Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, offering the Veda the fruity activities, karma, ganda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about glorious holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us have most humble businesses on all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as trees
that can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanshakalpa Tarabhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bhihevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai.
Shri Chaitanya Shastakam ki jai.
Cheto
Darpana Marjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shriya Kailava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam
Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamritasvadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baruda Nijata Saktis Tatra Pita Niyamitax Maranina Kala Etadvisi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durudaivam Jisamihajani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahisnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari Natanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavatat Bhakti Rahaituki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Parapankaja Stita Duvisad Visam Vichintaya Nayanam Galadasrudaya Vadanam Gadgadurudaya Jira Pulakali Sitam Bapurkada Tava Namagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayitam Nimesena Chakshusha Pravisaitam Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahename Aslishyava Padaratam Pinastumam Adarshana Marmahato Kurotuva Yata Tata Vadidatu Lampato Matprananastastu Saiva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki
Jai. Glory
Glory
to Shri Krishna
Krishna
Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of
conditional
flame.
life or repeated birth and death.
This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the strongest tree. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world of your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even when hands is roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before him. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Shri Guru Pranama prayers Ki Jai. Om Aganya Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurunimritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Swapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutapakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Sakarnitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varsavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Saraswani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruddha Papa Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambhode Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumeswam Yudhishta Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhavanaya Krishna Prema Vadayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Chise Namaha Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Suratorpan Gorma Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyat Vinduranya Kalpajamadaha Shrimad Ratnagara Simhasanastato Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestadi Bhi Sevamano Smarami
Shriman Rasara Sarandivam Sivata Tatasita Karshan Venus Nergo Pir Gopinata Sri Istunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakarsatma Sukha Praviksha Lakshavitesu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasrasata Sambrahma Sevimanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kanandam Aravinda Dalayataksam Marhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesa Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandakala Savanamalevam Sri Ranangadam Panayakeli Kilavilasam Shamam Tibangala Nita Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vittimanti Pasyanti Bhanti Kalayati Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sudujvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Madhyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabham Adurlabham Atmabhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayura Vitapi Manaso Munibungavanam Sopyasti Yat Prapada Simya Vishinta Tatve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitum Jagadanta Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanta Chayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavata Yo Manujasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Patitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridayesva Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalaya Mena Tishtan Nanavatara Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramapumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin. And he is the prime cause of all causes. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, yielding all desire in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feathers, with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness, charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form Shamsundar is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universe as both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible
to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure, unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the gyanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. Okay, go ahead. You can read.
He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe, at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men, who are imbued with devotion, sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure. The embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidant Sakis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrisimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions.
Thank you. Very good. Glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yato nivya itaratas chartesu vigyaswarat tene brahma hidaya adikavahe muyantiyat surayaha tejo varimadam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo misha damna swena sada nirastas kuhakam satyam param dimahi. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes. Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of three modes of material nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existing in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2. Dharma pujita kaitra votra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapo trayan mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapurer Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridaya Varudyate Tra Priti Bihi Susubhistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukhamukadamrita dravya samyatam pibata Bhagavatam masam alayam muhur aho raska bhuvibhavaka. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tier of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although this nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantha Raj Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Haribo, Haribo. So today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 12, verse number 27. Chayaya Kardamo Gyagne Agne Devahutya Pati Prabhu Manaso Dehatas Jajne Vishwakrito Jagat Chayaya, by the shadow. Kardama Muni, Jajne, became manifested. Devahutya, of Devahuti. Pati, husband. Prabhu, the master. Manasa, from the mind. Dehata, from the body. Cha, also. Idam, this. Jajne, developed. Vishwa, the universe. Krita, of the creator. Jagat, cosmic manifestation. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sage Kardama, husband of the great Devahuti, was manifested from the shadow of Brahma. Thus all became manifested from either the body or the mind of Brahma. Purport. Who would like to read? Anybody?
Purport by A.C. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Although one of the three modes of material nature is always prominent, they are never represented unalloyed by one another. Even in the most prominent existence of the two lower qualities, the modes of passion and ignorance, there is sometimes a tinge of the mode of goodness. Therefore, all the sons generated from the body of the mind of Brahma were in the modes of passion and ignorance, but some of them, like Kardama, were born in the mode of goodness. Narada was born in the transcendental state of Brahma.
Very good. Okay. Yeah, the three modes of material nature are always fluctuating. Like, for example, when you're sleeping, or when we are sleeping at night, we're in the mode of ignorance. When we wake up, we become influenced by the mode of rajas, activity, getting things done, taking showers and going to class, bowing down in front of the deities. And then later on in the day, we might come to the mode of goodness, like listening to Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing Bhagavatam. And then later on, go back to the mode of rajas, or mixed mode of rajas and tamas. So the modes of material nature are always fluctuating. Even people who are deeply in the mode of rajas and tamas, they also can manifest sometimes a mode of goodness. Okay. Yes.
Narada was born in the mode, in the transcendental state of Brahma. Is that in the mode of goodness, or that's higher than mode
Higher.
of goodness?
It's higher.
Okay.
Transcendental goodness.
So
Yes.
so then Brahma, because he is born in the material world, and entire material world is covered by three modes of either of these three modes of material nature. So can somebody even born or be in the higher mode of higher than the mode of goodness?
Yes, it's possible. So this is explained. Canto 3, chapter 12, verse number 23. Narada was born from the deliberation of Brahma, which is the best part of his body. So it says in the purport, Narada was born from the best deliberation of Brahma, because Narada was able to deliver the Supreme Lord to anyone he liked. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be realized by any amount of Vedic knowledge or by any number of penances, but a pure devotee of the Lord, like Narada, can deliver the Supreme Lord by his goodwill. The very name Narada suggests that he can deliver the Supreme Lord. Nara means the Supreme Lord, and Da means one who can deliver. That he can deliver the Supreme Lord does not mean that the Lord is like a commodity that can be delivered to any person. But Narada can deliver to anyone the transcendental loving service of the Lord as a servitor, friend, parent, or lover, as one may desire out of one's own transcendental love for the Lord. In other words, it is Narada only who can deliver the path of Bhakti Yoga, the highest mystic means for attaining, the highest mystic means for attainment of the Supreme Lord. So you see, the appearance of Narada is something special. And let's see if there's anything else here. Now, Narada is the second person in the disciplic succession. First is Brahma, and then Narada. Now, there are different Brahmas, right, in different times, in different kalpas. So, what differentiates the Brahma from which Narada appeared? That's the point, right? Okay, so we're going to hear that now, but we have to read some more verses here. So text 28. Vacham duhitaram tanvin swayambur haratim mana akamam chakame shatta sakama itina shrutam. Vachan, Vak, Duhitaram, unto the daughter, Tanvim, born of his body, Swayambhu, Brahma, Haratim, attracting, Mana, his mind, Akamam, without being sexually inclined, Chakame, desired, Ksata, Ovidura, Sakama, being sexually inclined, Iti, thus, Na, we, Shrutam, have heard. Ovidura, we have heard that Brahma had a daughter named Vak, who was born from his body and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. Who would like to read the purport?
Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. Balavan Indriya Gramo Vidvamshi Api Krastati. Bhagavatam 9.19.17. It is said that The senses are so mad and strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and learned man. Therefore, it is advised that one should not indulge in living alone, even with one's mother, sister, or daughter. Vidivamsha api krastati means that even the most learned also become victims of the sensuous urge. Maitreya hesitated to state this anomaly on the part of Brahma, who, are, who was sexually inclined to his own daughter. But still, he mentioned it because sometimes it is so happens, and the living example is Brahma himself. Although he is the primeval living being and the most learned within the whole universe, if Brahma could be a victim of the sexual urge, then what of others who are, who are, who are prone to so many mundane feralities? This extraordinary immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa. But it could not have happened in the kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord the four essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the Lord blessed Brahma,
Benedicted.
because Lord blessed Brahma after giving his
Benedicted.
Benedict.
It's not blessed, it's benedicted. It means the same thing.
Oh, it's in it is in blessed Maharaj. That's how it is there in the
Is that the way it is?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. It's benedictus here.
Because the Lord blessed benedicted Brahma after giving him lessons on the Bhagavad Gita,
On the Bhagavatam.
that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. This indicates that before the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, he might have fallen a victim to such sensuality, but after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there was no possibility of such failures.
There's the answer right there. Okay? So, there are different Brahmas and different Kalpas. So, the Brahma that we're talking about now had not heard the Srimad Bhagavatam. Later on, the Brahma that we're hearing about also, especially in these parts of the Bhagavatam, actually heard and saw Krishna and was instructed directly by him. So, the position of Brahma, as we've said before, is a titular position. It's a title position. Just like President of the United States is a title position. So, an earlier Brahma in an earlier Kalpa had not heard Srimad Bhagavatam yet. Therefore, it was possible for such Brahma to fall down. It's not possible for the present Brahma to fall down because he's heard the Bhagavatam and is strictly following the rules and regulations. So your question was about Narada, right? What was the question?
So, because everyone comes in mode of these three modes of material nature, Brahma would also come under these three modes of material nature. So then, how come somebody would born beyond these three modes?
Because of his previous lives. Don't forget, he was the son of a maidservant who for 4 months served 4 Bhakti Vedantas, 4 great devotees. During that time, her son, Narada, at that time his name wasn't Narada yet, he was not interested in frivolous sports, playing, let's say soccer or any of those games. He would sat down, he would listen to the 4 sages discuss spiritual subjects. He would do things to serve them. He also asked them permission if he could eat their leftover prasadam, which is called maha maha. In other words, it's double time better than just maha, because it's been touched by these great sages. So in that way, he became purified in that 4-month period of the Chaturmasya with these great sages, although he was only 5 years old. After they left, by some, reason, or for some reason or other, his mother was bitten by a snake and killed. And now he's an orphan, but he wasn't afraid because he had been instructed by these 4 sages. And he went through his life always, in that particular life, always engaged in Krishna consciousness. And when there was partial destruction, the next time he was born as the son of Brahma, but already perfected because of a previous lifetime of pure devotional service. So that's why he comes in such an exalted position. Okay? He's transcendental because he was instructed by these great sages. And the rest of his life, he was engaged in devotional service. So being the son of Brahma is already a very high position, right? But because he was situated in Suddhasattva position, he comes out as a pure devotee who can deliver Krishna to anyone. Okay, go ahead.
Maharaj, one question here. See, Brahma was creating so many things. Suddenly this topic came. Why Prabhupada is saying that this is not this Brahma? Because I'm a little confused here.
Okay. Do you know what it means when you say the position of Brahma is titular? Do you know what that means? Huh?
The creation, what was happening, it's not one Brahma. That's how we need to assume all these things.
Well, yeah, it's like President of the United States. It's not always the same person. So in previous kalpa, when the Bhagavatam was not spoken yet, this particular Brahma had not heard the Bhagavatam, and therefore he became attracted by his own daughter named Vak. Right. But this present Brahma has not only heard Bhagavatam, he's seen Krishna, he's been instructed by Krishna, so there's no possibility for him to fall down. Just like you're hearing, I'm hearing every day Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, we're hearing things that are very serious. And one of those serious things is we're hearing about a previous Brahma who fell down. And now we're going to understand why that happened, right? So all these things that we're hearing can make us become very serious about following all the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, understanding how dangerous it is. Like, for example, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam every day, and the subjects that we're hearing are serious. How one can fall down into Maya, how one can become completely, let's say, an illusion, and completely lose all desire for Krishna consciousness and just engage in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and committing all kinds of sinful activities. But how someone even in that position can become purified, and by hearing on a regular basis Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, etc., etc. So we're learning all these things. And we're getting examples from the past, that in the past, when the Bhagavatam had not been spoken yet, there was a Brahma, and he was holding that position, but he developed this very, very bad desire to have some relationships, physical relationship with his own daughter. And now we're going to hear exactly what happened. And so now what you're going to hear now is very significant, because the associates of Brahma were not, let's say, favorable to criticize him. Why? Because he's Brahma, right? And so therefore they understood that there must be some reason, some higher reason why he could fall victim to such desire. So there's some more issue here, a bigger issue, why this happened. So let's read it, and then you'll see.
Okay, Maharaj.
So who's next?
What-
Somebody else can read.
Direct purport, one should, however, take serious note of this incident. The human being is a social animal and is unrestricted.
So right before that it says, but after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there's no possibility of such failures. Okay? That's important. Just like we're hearing Bhagavatam, and if we do it on a regular basis, we will not do what that previous Brahma did. Right? Okay, go ahead. One should,
however, take serious note of this incident. The human being is a social animal, and is unrestricted mixing with the fair sex leads to downfall. Such social freedom of man and woman, especially among the younger section, is certainly a great stumbling block on the path of spiritual progress. Material bondage is due only to sexual bondage, and therefore unrestricted association of man and woman is surely a great impediment. Maitreya cited this example on the part of Brahma just to bring to our notice this great danger.
Yeah, one day I was invited to do a Griha Pravesh blessing of a house, and only the husband and wife were there. So at one point we were going through all the different rooms of the house, and the wife was spreading water, and we came to the bedroom. In the bedroom there was this gigantic bed, and it was clear that the husband and wife were sleeping in the same bed. Now, in Vedic tradition, apart from when there's a need to have, a child, the husband and wife do not sleep in the same bed. They sleep in separate bed and oftentimes in separate rooms. And so, traditionally, there was a section of the house that was for the women, and another section of the house that were for the men. And especially in Bengal, it's still practiced in certain places. So, this sleeping in the same bed of husband and wife, although that seems to be the what you would call the habit now in most couples, that was not practiced previously, except in the case when there's going to be reproduction. So, why? Because the temptation is there to engage in extra, sexual activity besides wanting to have children. So all these rules and regulations were practiced to safeguard the sanctity and purity of the husband and wife and their family, right? So material bondage is due only to sexual bondage, and therefore unrestricted association of man and woman is surely a great impediment. Maitreya cited this example on the part of Brahma just to bring to our notice this great danger. So even amongst our own devotees, this is going on. When I say going on, sleeping in the same bed together. Now, a lot of people will start, disagreeing with this, and there are all different types of mental weaknesses that people would think, oh, well, if we don't sleep in the same bed, that means that my husband doesn't love me. But that's not the point. The point is that the the purity of one's consciousness is much more guaranteed when there is less physical contact in the family. When I say physical contact, you know what I mean. So, therefore, traditionally the women would sleep in one part of the house, the men would sleep in another part of the house. They would see each other every day. They would work together. But there was this understanding of the danger of lusty behavior, and therefore, to protect themselves, they chose to sleep in different rooms or different beds. Okay. So now let's read the next one. We're going to hear a lot more now about this. Just read the English translation and purport. Go ahead, somebody.
Translation. Thus, finding their father so deluded in an act of immorality, the sages, headed by Marichi, all sons of Brahma, spoke as follows with great respect.
Purport.
The sages like Marichi were not in the wrong in submitting their protests against the acts of their great father. They knew very well that even though their father committed a mistake, there must have been some great purpose behind the show. Otherwise, such a great personality could not have committed such a mistake.
Now you see how they're thinking. This is very interesting. They're not ready to jump on Brahma and, kick him out or whatever. They're thinking very carefully. Now here's Brahma, an exalted person. Of course, this is in a different kalpa, but it looks like he's done one of the worst things possible. Not only becoming, let's say, sexually agitated by a woman, but the woman happens to be his own daughter. And her name is Vak. And she, of course, is not attracted at all to her father for such, activity. So, but still, they're very careful. They say, well, wait a minute. There must be some bigger reason why he's doing this. Right? It's not just the fact that he's attracted, which is a fact, but there must be something else behind this. Right? So you see how careful people are not to jump to conclusions and then basically condemn someone and embarrass them and put them in a situation of, having to walk away from their position and being humiliated, etc. So let's see what it says here. Go ahead.
It might be that Brahma wanted to warn his subordinates about human frailties in their dealings
Wait a minute, take this other.
This is always very dangerous for persons who are on the path of self realization. Therefore, great personalities like Brahma, even when in the wrong, should not be neglected, nor could be great sages headed by Marichi show any disrespect because of his extraordinary behavior.
Now, this is very, let's say, this is a question that you have to very deeply go into. Here's Brahma in a previous kalpa, and he's engaging in what is like the worst thing you can imagine. He's attracted to his own daughter for sex, and the daughter is not interested at all. And but yet the sages say, well, wait a minute, let's be careful here, because they knew very well that even though their father, meaning Brahma, committed a mistake, there must have been some great purpose behind the show. Otherwise, such a great personality could not have committed such a mistake. So this is the way devotees think. I mean, real devotees. They don't jump to conclusions right away. They analyze the situation, and they think very deeply about it. Here is Brahma, the number one person in the universe, and he's doing, or he's about to do something that's like the worst thing you could ever think of doing. But they're thinking, there must be some reason why he's doing this. Anyway, so so otherwise such a great personality could not have committed such a mistake. It might be that Brahma wanted to warn his subordinates about human frailties in their dealings with women. Okay, so human frailties in his dealing with women. This is always very dangerous for persons who are in the path of self-realization. Therefore, great personalities like Brahma, even when in the wrong, should not be neglected, nor could the great sages, headed by Marichi, show any disrespect because of his extraordinary behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that we think like this in every situation. We're talking about a person named Brahma, who's exceptional. So for him to commit such a mistake, it's almost impossible to believe he could do it. But he hasn't actually physically done it yet, but he's contemplating it and he's attracted to it, you see. So, okay, now let's continue reading. Somebody else.
So read text 30, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Translation, Mishla Prabhupada. O Father, this performance in which you are endeavoring to complicate yourself was never attempted by any other Brahma, nor by anyone else, nor by you in previous kalpas, nor will anyone dare to attempt it in the future. You are the Supreme Being in the universe, so how is it that you want to have sex with your daughter and cannot control your desire?
Wow. Now you see they're openly speaking now. They're not holding back, but at the same time they're being very careful not to insult Brahma. Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The post of Brahma is the supermost post in the universe, and it appears that there are many Brahmas and many universes beside the one in which we are situated. One who fills this position must be
This
idle.
post.
One who fills this post must be idle in behavior.
Ideal.
Ideal. One who fills this post must be ideal in behavior. For Brahma sets this example for all living entities. Brahma, the living entity who is in the most pious and spiritual elevated, is entrusted with the post next to that of the personality of Godhead.
Is entrusted with the post next to that of the personality
Of the Godhead.
Okay. So therefore, you have to be careful. You're not dealing with somebody off the street here. You're dealing with the number one person in the whole universe after Krishna. So they're being very careful. At the same time, they're being blunt, but not offensive. Okay, so now text 31. Somebody can read.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Translation. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed by spiritual improvement by people.
It's followed for.
Followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. Purport. It is said that a supremely powerful living entity can do anything and everything he likes, and such acts do not affect him in any way. For example, the sun, the most powerful fiery planet in the universe, can evaporate water from anywhere and still remain as powerful. The sun evaporates water from filthy places and yet is not infected with the quality of filth. Similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, since he is the spiritual master of all living entities, his behavior and character should be so ideal that people will follow such sublime behavior and derive the highest spiritual benefit. Therefore, he should not have acted as he did.
Okay. See, there's a long discussion about this because it's many faceted, and we're not dealing with a person off the street. We're dealing with Brahma, the number one person in the universe. So there has to be respect, and at the same time, there has to be rectification. Now you see how careful they are, Marichi and the other great sages. They're being extremely, extremely careful because they're not dealing with an ordinary person. And there might be some bigger issue behind this whole thing. Right. So go ahead, next, somebody else read.
Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who, by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion for all goodness. Purport.
So now they're praying to Krishna. Okay? When everything else fails, what do? You pray to Krishna. Right? Okay, go ahead.
Lust for sexual intercourse is so strong that it appears herein that Brahma could not be dissuaded from his determination in spite of the appeal by his great sons like Marichi. Therefore, the great sons began to pray to the Supreme Lord for the good sense of Brahma.
See? They're praying to Krishna.
It is only by the grace of the Supreme Lord that one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desires. The Lord gives protection to devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental loving service.
So that should be our, let's say, culture always engaged. If you want to be protected, we should always be engaged in a transcendental loving service. Go ahead.
And by his causeless mercy, he forgives the accidental fall of a devotee.
See how kind Krishna is. By his causeless mercy, he forgives the accidental fall of a devotee, whether it's an ordinary devotee or whether it's Lord Brahma. Right?
Therefore, sages like Marichi prayed for the mercy of the Lord, and their prayer was fruitful.
So here we have a situation. There are often situations like this in the material world. Like, for example, let's say there's a wife, and she finds out that their husband is secretly having some relationship with another woman. What should she do? Or it could be the opposite. The husband finds out that the wife is engaged in some illicit way with another man. What should he do? Now, I have seen situations like this many times. So there's two ways of dealing with it. One is you get so angry that there's no mercy, there's no forgiveness. It has to be, you have to break the relationship. It has to be a divorce, blah, blah, blah. And the other is that one does not break the relationship and tries to forgive, all in the interest of the children. Because what's going to happen if the husband and wife separate? And it becomes like a nightmare. So I've seen, I know one person, when he found out that his wife was cheating on him, he did not become, he was like worried about her. So he didn't reject her, but he convinced her that they should immediately leave where they were and go back to India and try and forget about the whole thing, the whole situation. And that's what he did. And he saved his marriage by doing it. He saved his wife also. And the person that the wife got involved with was his best friend. That's even worse. His best friend, right? Now these are real life experiences that I've seen, you know. And he did the right thing. He did not want to, let's say, drag his wife publicly, blame her completely, nor did he want to get into any argument with his friend. I mean, his best friend, who was engaged in this horrible situation. So he decided, okay, let's go back to India, start all over again, or stay far away from all where this whole thing is happening. And that's what he did, and he saved his marriage. So these are big questions. These are big, serious questions. How do we act in these situations? And you're seeing here how careful Marichi and the other great devotees are dealing with Brahma. But even on a smaller level, normal people, these type of things happen, and how should they react to them? Well, we can learn from this episode of Brahma that there should be a complete, let's say, be very, 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 very careful not to humiliate someone at the same time, not to permit anyone to continue engaging in abominable activity. Otherwise, you're going to make that person go away. and that could break up a family, that could cause all kinds of long-term problems for the children, etc. Okay, go ahead. What verse?
33 Maharaj.
Yeah.
The father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later, that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness.
So here we see all the Prajapatis, all the progenitors that were sons of Brahma, the way they were speaking. Brahma became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Well, you see, shame is not a bad thing when one has committed a very bad or very egregious mistake. They should feel shame. They shouldn't be dragged in, through publicly and humiliated, but they should feel shame. Now, if they don't feel any shame at all, and they're still determined to go ahead and do their abominable thing, that means that they're being very sinful and that they're going to suffer terribly. But if they feel shame and they feel remorse and they apologize and they try and rectify their mistake, and then they should not be humiliated publicly. You don't want to publicly humiliate people because then they get so upset and angry that they'll go away, or they'll be, they feel as if I should commit suicide or whatever. So you have to be very careful in these situations, very, very careful. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. Oh, purport, I'm sorry.
Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The best way to compensate for one's sinful acts is to give up one's body at once. And Brahma, the leader of the living entities, showed this by his personal example. Brahma has a fabulous duration of life.
Fabulous
Duration of life. But he was obliged to give up his body due to grievous sin. Even though he had merely contemplated it in his mind without having actually done it.
So you see, in previous ages, simply thinking of doing something sinful, you would get the result, the reaction. Whereas in Kali Yuga, you have to actually do it. But previously, just thinking about doing something wrong, you would get the sinful reaction. Okay, go ahead.
This is a lesson for the living entities, showing how sinful an act it is to indulge in unrestricted sex life. Even to think of abominable sex life is sinful, and to compensate for such acts,
Sinful acts.
And to compensate for such acts,
Such sinful acts, right? Okay. See, it's different.
Yeah. One has to give up his body. In other words, one's duration of life, blessings, opulence, etc. are decreased by sinful acts. And the most dangerous type of sinful act is unrestricted sex.
And that's what's going on today in America, unrestricted sex. And even in India. It's terrible. Okay, go ahead.
Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, or sinful life is the cause of gross ignorance. The future of ignorance is darkness or fog. Darkness or fog still covers the whole universe, and the sun is the only counteracting principle. One who takes shelter of the Lord, the perpetual light, has no fear of being annihilated in the darkness of fog or ignorance.
So if you're driving someday at night and it's very foggy, you can hardly see anything, that is the sinful body of Brahma that you're seeing. Okay? So it's very dangerous because you can hardly see anything, right? And you're driving at night, it's already dark. So now, now we're learning different things that all different aspects of the result of sinful activity. And there are many, so that body that Brahma had in which he had these desires, he had to get rid of it. Now, let's fast forward to today. If you are contemplating, or if someone is contemplating committing a very bad sin, like Brahma in ancient times contemplated, you're going to have to actually do it to get the result, the highly negative result. But therefore, whenever anyone is so much tempted to engage in some sinful activity, they should take complete shelter of a bona fide devotee or devotees and beg them, please help me overcome these desires. And the devotees will help. Right? But if you keep it a secret and actually engage in such activity, it ruins your whole life. And you become shamed, you become publicly accused of abominable activity, and people completely lose faith in you. You're humiliated. It's not worth it. See, it's not worth it. We need to strictly follow the regulative principles: no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication. Then we avoid all these problems. But if we become tempted to try and engage in some of these sinful activities, it's only going to cause complete disruption of one's spiritual life, and getting humiliated, and people losing trust in you. It's the worst thing that can happen. So when you're an honest person, you have self-control, and if you have a problem, you reveal it to the devotees, honest devotees, right? And devotees that you can trust. You reveal it, and you get help. You get advice how to overcome the situation. But if you get angry and belligerent, and then you'll walk away, and that means you don't want to face the reality of the mistake that you made. So admitting that I made a mistake, asking for forgiveness, and undergoing remedial measures to rectify such an egregious mistake, that will all happen because devotees are merciful. But if you resist and you remain adamant, like I have a friend, I haven't seen him now for about 40 years, but we were very good friends. And he had a very nice wife and a nice child, and he cheated on her. And he started seeing this other woman. And then his wife became really upset, and they got divorced. From that point on, he became like Ajamil, attracted to this other woman. And now he's dying. He's very, very sick. And basically ruined his whole life. It ruined his whole life, right? His wife eventually got married to someone else, and she was a very pious lady, and has a nice daughter. But his whole life was ruined because, at one point I was trying to advise him. I said, "Look, why did you do such a horrible thing?" But anyway, let's not, dwell on that. And let's work on how you're going to fix this. He didn't want to try. He couldn't get his mind off of that other woman, and it's ruined his whole life, right? And now he's dying. He's very, very sick, and he's suffering. Now, suffering like that extremely before you die is actually good, because if you don't suffer like that for a very bad activity, then you're going to get more suffering after you die. So in one way, he's having all this suffering now, so that after he dies, he's not going to suffer as much. But anyway, either way, the main thing is that we should get help, and we should trust. If we have trusted friends, they would be very careful, just like Marichi and the Prajapatis of Brahma are being very, very careful how they deal with him, because he's an exalted person. He's about to make a huge mistake, and there must be some other reason why this is happening, because it's unimaginable that Brahma could act like this. So they were very, very careful. And Brahma felt shameful, and he gave up his body. That means he's giving up his, let's say, desire for such abominable activity. So that's what we should aim for in these situations, to convince a person who's tempted to do such things, or who has done such things, to give up such desires and purify themselves by taking refuge of genuine devotees and being constantly engaged in devotional service. And it'll be forgiven. It'll be forgiven. So that's why we have that verse in the 9th chapter. Let me see. Okay, 9th chapter, verse number 'Apichet sudara charo bhajante mam ananya bhak sadhur eva samantavya samyak vyavasityo hi saha. This is 9th chapter, 30th verse, 9:30. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly, because he is properly situated in his determination. So now, we have to be very careful how we understand this verse. So somebody can read maybe one of the ladies wants to read. Give them the better phone. Give her the better phone.
Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly, because he is properly situated in his determination. Purport. The word sudurachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional, and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditional life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness, or the devotional service of the Lord, has activities which are called transcendental.
Okay, so you see, there are two sets of activities. One is according to the laws and the, let's say, the principles of the society that you live in. And the other are transcendental principles of Krishna consciousness. So we have to understand, like, for example, it says you don't drive on the left-hand side, you drive on the right-hand side in the United States. So that's, but in India, people drive on the left-hand side, okay? So these are things you have to adapt to, right? They're called conditional. But besides that, there are transcendental laws or constitutional. Constitutional means it's by necessity because of the way you are or we are created. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we're all coming from Krishna, and everything we have, the body, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, everything we have, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and so forth, coming from Krishna. So by constitution, we belong to Krishna. Our body is made with bhumirapo nalo vayukam mano buddhirevicha. And then we also have the mind, the intelligence, and so forth. So all these things are given to us by Krishna, therefore they belong to Krishna, and we should use them only in Krishna's service. That's called constitutional. That's what we are obliged to do. And if we don't, we become sinful. Okay, go ahead.
Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination.
Okay, so see, that's very important. There's two big things being said here. One is that sometimes the conditional rules that we have to follow may violate the constitutional rules that we have to follow. Like, for example, let's say someone doesn't believe in or does not approve of same-sex marriage. So let's say they're a florist or they make cakes or anything. So the two same-sex married people come and they said, we want to have a birthday cake for John and Joe. And the person in the store says, well, no, I don't want to do that. You can go and get a cake somewhere else. So there have been, court cases in situations like this. And finally, I think it was the Supreme Court decided that a person has a right to, based on their religious beliefs, to reject such a demand. because there are other places that they can go to get a cake. Right? So you see, sometimes you have a conflict between the conditional rules and regulations of society and the constitutional rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Okay. Now the second point here, which is the bigger point, is that it says, besides these, meaning besides the constitutional, the conditional rules and regulations we have to follow, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature, in other words, someone who's actually following Krishna consciousness seriously, and is engaged in Krishna consciousness, or the devotional service of the Lord, has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, that is, who you are eternally. You're not this body, you're an eternal soul, and you're part and parcel of Krishna. And they are technically called devotional service. Yeah, so we have to engage in devotional service because that's who we are. We're the eternal servants of Krishna. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. In other words, the real issue is that you have to follow your constitutional devotional service obligations. They're much more important than the conditional rules and regulations. Right? He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. That means the more he learns about Krishna, the more he progresses. That's what we're trying to do by coming to class. Right? Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically, like cheating on your wife or cheating on your husband. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. So that gentleman, after he found out that his wife was having illicit relationship with his best friend of 20, 30, 40 years, right? He immediately convinced her, let's leave this place, meaning the United States. We'll go back to India, and we'll try and forget this. And you try and forget what you've done, and I forgive you. And she agreed, and they're still together, right? Even though what happened was horrible, one of the worst things you could ever do. But see, he wanted to save his marriage, and he did not try and like roast his wife, like, you know, oh, you did this, and we're going to get divorced. And no, he wanted to save her and his family, his children, from this abomination. So that's why it says the temporary fall down does not disqualify him. Now, of course, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, then there has to be separation. But if you're willing to stop and take refuge in following Krishna consciousness seriously, then it can be forgiven, even one of the most abominable things. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. So if if someone does commit a horrible, abominable act, sinful act, if they admit it, if they feel ashamed that they did it, if they're willing to take advice from bona fide devotees and rectify themselves, they can be forgiven. If they say, oh, please forgive me, but they continue doing these things, then there has to be, it means that they're not serious about Krishna consciousness at all. Therefore, there has to be ostracism, or they have to be, separated. But if they're willing to be rehabilitated by engaging in devotional service seriously again, with the help of many other devotees, then they can be forgiven. Okay, go ahead.
The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord, sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness
In other words, trapped by some sinful activity, yeah.
But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course as soon as a devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness.
Okay, so this is a big statement here. Therefore it says, therefore the process of devotional service is always a success. Why? Because there's possibility to be rectified of mistakes that we make, and to get more serious about following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, we don't want to publicly humiliate someone that's made a big mistake, but we don't want them to continue making those mistakes. So if they're willing to listen, follow, take refuge in more serious, more advanced devotees, and rectify themselves, then they can be forgiven. And therefore it's considered that they had an accidental fall down. But if they continue to have their fall downs, then that cannot be forgiven then, because they're making a habit of it, of falling down, rectifying, falling down, rectifying. Right? Go ahead.
Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident he is found to have fallen. The words Sadhur Eva, he is saintly, are very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly, even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word...
So the key word here is accidentally. You understand? Accidentally. That means they unnecessarily put themselves in a vulnerable position and they fell down. But now they realize the mistake they make, and they're not going to do it again. They promise not to do it again. Just like when Jagai and Madai wounded Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya came running right away to kill them. And he was going to kill them. Nityananda was bleeding from his forehead. But Lord Nityananda fell at the feet of Lord Chaitanya and begged him, look, you are Patit Pavan. You are the most merciful. If your purpose is to give mercy to all the fallen souls in Kali Yuga, if you kill these two, where's the mercy? So please forgive them. So Lord Chaitanya said, okay, because you are asking me, I will do that. He said, but they must promise never to do this again. And they did promise. And therefore they were forgiven. Now, if you promise, no, I'll never do it again, and you do it again, then therefore you lose all credibility. So, therefore it's considered that their fall down was accidental. Okay, go ahead.
And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides the devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. In the Narasimha Purana, the following statement is given. The meaning...
So that's the point. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. So if you recognize, or if you admit, yes, I made this mistake, I feel very sorry I did it, I promise I'm not going to do it again, and I'm going to unflinchingly and exclusively be engaged in devotional service the rest of my life, you're forgiven. Okay, go ahead.
The meaning is that even if one fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities, these activities should be considered to be like the spots that resemble the mark of a rabbit on the moon.
If you look at the moon at night, you might think that you're seeing a rabbit with two ears like this. Anyway, go ahead.
Such spots do not become an impediment to the diffusion of moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs, as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it is to be understood that he's not a high devotee.
So that friend of mine who cheated on his wife and then didn't really try to rectify himself, it ruined his whole life. On the other hand, the man who forgave his wife, who cheated on him, and the wife accepted his, let's say, mercy. They're still together, their children are happy, and, it's forgotten. Right? So you see, there's different ways of dealing with things, but this purport is extremely important. This is not giving a, let's say, a free, it's not saying that, look, you can continue doing all kinds of abominable things and still be a devotee. It's not saying that at all. It's saying that if there's an accidental fall down, how do we know it's accidental? Well, everybody is weak. Sometimes we make mistakes in the early 8 stages of Krishna consciousness. But they can be forgiven and rectified. If you're willing to go through the rectification and not do that again, then you're forgiven. It's not that, you can do the abominable thing, get rectified, do it again, get rectified, do it again, get rectified. No, that's not going to be accepted. Okay, so we'll stop right there. This is a hard subject, especially we're talking about a Brahma who was about to commit the most abominable act possible, imaginable. But now we see how carefully Marichi and the sons of Brahma dealt with him. So we should develop the same self-control and desire to help someone in trouble to rectify themselves and help them in every way possible to save them from falling away from Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said that you make somebody a devotee, then they make some mistakes, and you torch them in public, you humiliate them, and you make them go away. That's a big mistake. We should do everything possible, not to lose devotees, but to do everything possible to keep them in Krishna consciousness. So these are big questions, not questions, but these are big topics. And you see how reading Bhagavatam is very important because, especially where it says that Maitreya hesitated to state this anomaly or this mistake on the part of Brahma, who was sexually inclined to his own daughter, but still he mentioned it because sometimes it so happens, and the living example is Brahma himself, although he is the primeval living being and the most learned within the whole universe. If Brahma could be a victim of sexual urge, then what of others who are prone to so many mundane frailties? This extraordinary immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa, but it could have happened in the kalpa, but it could not have happened in the kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord, the 4 essential verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Lord benedicted Brahma after giving him lessons on the Bhagavatam that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. This is very important because we are hearing Bhagavatam every day now. That means if we do this, we will lose any desire to make abominable activities or to perform abominable activities, and we'll be saved. We'll be able to go back to Godhead in this lifetime. Okay, I'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
श्री गुरु चरणा पद्मा केवला भगति सद्मा
Shri Guru Charana
केवला भगति
যাহারা প্রসাদে ভাই এ ভাব তরিয়া যায় কৃষ্ণ প্রাপ্তি হয় যাহা হইতে গুরু মুখ পদ্মা বাক্যা চিতেতে করিয়া ক্যা আরে না করি হো মানে আশা শ্রী গুরু চরণে রতি এই সে উত্তমা গতি प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा आशा जे प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा आशा जे प्रसादे पूरे सर्वा चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेमा भक्ति जाहा होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेमा भक्ति जाहा होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे ज्ञा जहारा चरितो वेदे ज्ञा जहारा चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदाम जनरा बंधु प्रभुपाद पतित पावना प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा शील प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा शील प्रभुपदा नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी निति नामिने कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवाणी पाश्चातादिसतारिणे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा प्रभु नित्यानंदा द्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा सादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol. Nityai Gaura Hari Bol.
Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari. All glories to Sanskrit, all glories to Sanskrit, all glories to Sanskrit, all glories to Shiguru and Shiguranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Namaste Saraswati Devi The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotion. Bow down to his lotus feet, we pray going by his grace, one can cross the ocean to sustenance, obtaining mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the Lord's eminent benevolence.
Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The way the scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of the mercy and the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give me the shade of the lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the holy world, so we take the shelter of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.